From the jaw-dropping American Tragedy episode in season 15 to the horrifying Reasonable Doubt episode from 2014, these are Law & Order's most controversial episodes of all time. Since its first episode in 1990, the fan favorite shows dropped some of the most incredible seasons and episodes in TV history, but it's also had its fair share of scandals along the way. And the jaw-dropping American Tragedy episode in season 15 had fans questioning why it was given the green light in the first place. After a series of assaults puts the residents of the Upper East Side on edge, renowned celebrity chef Jolene Castile thinks she's the next victim when someone follows her home. In a moment of panic, she shoots and kills an unarmed African-American teenager. And by the time the cops show up, her only excuse is that she did it in self-defense. She says that he was the one attacking women in the area, but it turns out he had no criminal record. ADA Rafael Barba prosecutes Jolene for murder, but faces intense opposition from her defense attorney Lester Cohen, who argues that Jolene acted out of fear for her life, and that if anyone else was in Jolene's situation, they would have done the same. But while the show talks about some very traumatizing topics, the biggest reason why it sparked controversy was because it was inspired by the real-life case of Trayvon Martin, a young black teenager shot and killed by George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer. The show's writers wanted to address the systemic issues related to the case, but in the end, the script made the episode look like a sad attempt at recreating the event. In fact, it looked like the show was trying to capitalize on one of the biggest cases of that time. Though it's not the first time they've given us low-quality scripts. I mean, who can forget season 14's train crash episodes? Lost Reputation and its follow-up episode, Above Suspicion, both dropped on September 26, 2012, and with that, so did the fans' expectations of the entire season. Lost Reputation picks up where the season 13 finale, Rhodium Nights, left off. Captain Cragen's framed for the murder of an escort named Carissa Gibson, who's connected to a prostitution ring operated by rival pimps Bart Gansel and Delia Wilson. And in this two-part series, fans get to see the SVU team's relentless efforts to clear Cragen's name and uncover the web of corruption surrounding the scandal. But in the mother of all plot twists, fans find out that Detective Brian Cassidy killed Carissa in self-defense during an undercover operation. Also, he's told to stay silent by Captain Steve Harris. As the story unfolds, even Detective Nick Amaro finds himself on the wrong side of the law when he faces accusations of abuse from a former lover. It's a lot to follow, right? Well, that's exactly why fans struggled to get through this season in the first place. In an attempt to keep viewers on the edge of their seats, they forced them to get off the chair and turn off the TV. But it's not the first time they've pulled something like this, because season 19's Undiscovered Country was a major attempt at overcompensation. This episode does a deep dive into the heart-wrenching case of Drew Householder, an infant who tragically loses his life after his religious extremist parents, Aaron and Maggie, refuse to get him life-saving surgery. Aaron and Maggie believe that God would either heal their son or take him to heaven, and are completely against modern medicine. So when the hospital attempts to intervene, the parents sue, claiming their religious freedom had been violated. When ADA Barba catches wind of this case, he takes on the parents, and even with Bureau Chief Vanessa Hadid begging him to drop the case or accept a plea deal, he refuses to back down. But that's where things get really interesting. Hoping to get help, Raphael reaches out to Jack McCoy, the former executive ADA and DA from the original Law & Order series, and from there on out, the scenes turn into pure chaos. So the question is, why was this episode so hated? Well, for one, the case itself had no basis in real life. The writers sensationalized it by acting like the baby was still alive. And to make matters worse, this whole episode was very out of character for Barba, who's always been the logical person in the DA's office. It's safe to say that this episode had fans divided over the ending. But when it comes to causing a debate on social media, nothing compares to Law & Order. SVU's Season 18 episode, Rape Interrupted. I'd suggest buckling up because there's a lot to unpack in this one. College student Ellis Griffin gets arrested for allegedly assaulting Janie Spears. And when the student claims that their encounter was consensual, with Janie fully awake and responsive, all hell breaks loose on the show. Janie insists that she was passed out and doesn't even remember saying yes to him, and with her father being Sergeant Patrick Griffin, things get even more complicated. Since Patrick's an old friend of Detective Benson, he obviously turns to her for help by calling in an old favor, and Benson gets thrown into a tricky situation. There's an immediate clash between Benson and ADA Barba, who have different views on who's actually at fault here. Sure, you've got to give them some props for tackling the controversial issue of assault and the difficulties of proving consent. But fans weren't too happy with the way some characters dealt with the case, because it just proved once again how difficult it is for victims to get justice, especially if there's alcohol involved. Julie Martin, the writer behind this controversial episode, talked about how she drew inspiration from real-life cases of campus assaults and wanted to address it as a gray area. But instead, she wrote a script that even a trigger warning couldn't prepare you for. That said, assault cases are an everyday thing for longtime fans of the show. Still, the next episode I'm going to talk about had even the OGs traumatized. Seriously, I'm going to make you a star. In season 21 made headlines everywhere. The lead of this story was Gemma Brooks, played brilliantly by Elizabeth A. Davis. Gemma comes forward, accusing media mogul Sir Tobias Moore of trying to sexually assault her during an audition, which she narrowly escapes from. The young girl secretly records Moore's confession on her phone and reaches out to Lieutenant Olivia Benson, who takes up the case and uncovers Moore's history of abusing aspiring actresses while using his influence to silence them. As if that's not enough, it's revealed that Moore has connections to high-ranking officials, including Deputy Chief William Dodds. Meanwhile, ADA Dominic Carisi Jr. joins forces with Benson to bring Moore to justice. But wait, doesn't this all sound a little too familiar to you? That's because it's based on the real-life Harvey Weinstein scandal, where the former producer faced allegations of harassment and assault from women in the industry. Yup, they straight up took the stories of the victims from that case and dramatized it to make bank. As you can imagine, that didn't go over so well with the general public. But if you thought including Harvey Weinstein was bad, wait till you hear about the horrifying Reasonable Doubt episode from 2014. The episode centers around Frank Maddox, a charming and successful TV producer who's accused by his ex-wife Catherine Summers of abusing their daughter Chelsea. Frank obviously denies the allegations straight away, saying that Catherine's trying to get revenge for their failed marriage. But things take a turn for the worst when he leaves Catherine for her younger sister, Rose. Detective Benson and Lieutenant Declan Murphy take on the case, only to find extremely conflicting evidence and testimonies from the people involved. ADA Raphael steps in to prosecute Frank, but first, he's got to get through Lester Cohen, who uses his legal expertise and media-savvy tactics to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. This episode sparked controversy, since it threw shade at the case involving filmmaker Woody Allen, who faced accusations of abusing his adopted daughter, Dylan Farrow, in the 90s. The way the showrunners framed the episode made it highly predictable. And the fact that they were cashing in on Farrow's trauma didn't make the situation any better. But while the showrunners didn't make any public statements about the backlash this episode got, they were quick to pat themselves on the back for their hard work. Kevin Fox, the writer behind this episode, said he was glad SVU wasn't afraid of tackling difficult and controversial topics head-on. Well, maybe because they know it'll get the most views and the most social media engagement. So there you have it, from the horrifying Reasonable Doubt episode from 2014 to the jaw-dropping American Tragedy episode in season 15, those were Law & Order's most controversial episodes of all time.